Welcome again to tonight's Member and Friends Best Photo program from Sawmill River Audubon. So we have a great lineup of 12 different photographers tonight. Some of you that come to Bird Chat will recognize many of these names, and they're really, really quite special photos. We actually have a ringer in the group, David McIntyre, who was a former board member for Sawmill River Audubon and now lives on the West Coast. He did a program for us earlier this year that many of us enjoyed about California birding spots, and he has some great California pictures to share with us tonight. Bonnie, we're ready. I know you're here.
Oh, the pair, the red-tailed hawk pair, they've been named. My good friend Michelle named Susie on the left and Larry on the right. He arrived in 2013. They were in the same tree, but I took photo liberties and put them together. My fish crow, it is an award-winning photo. This is a self-portrait, and thankfully you got the eye with a little lighter exposure. That's me in the car. That's the flash of my camera, taking the photo of the fish crow and the sun in the background. So he was perfectly lit. I love this one, and it's a very common behavior. He or she was drying out in the sun. It's one of the young ones that come over to us. You can see like 2 dozen, 3 dozen in the late summer, early fall. They're all there, front train station. I have to plug Feeder Watch, but we're at the office. We're outside, thankfully. Saturday, Sundays, 9 to 11. And I love the colors in this one. This was Somers. This one was magic for me.
All right, so for Troy, I actually have some words that he wanted to share. He said, until I joined Sawmill River Audubon, most of my bird photography was taken in my backyard. What I've discovered is that my backyard is full of life and color and wonderment. It just seems to me that common backyard birds are anything but common. And I hope you enjoy these few backyard birds from my backyard, says Troy. Check that out. My goodness. So he says, this was taken summer 2021 in my backyard. I identified the female at the feeder, and I hoped a male would eventually arrive. I waited patiently for nearly half an hour. It's an understatement to say I was excited to shoot this image. I love the heart-shaped patch on its chest. That's excellent, isn't it? Such a vivid bird. So this one, Troy says, was taken February 2020, as it says, in his backyard. Having never seen a northern flicker before, I literally lost my breath on this cold winter morning. I don't think I'll ever get accustomed to seeing this amazingly decorated bird. Now, we agree. You got a nice, lovely, crisp image of its special markings, too. So taken November 2021, as it says, in Troy's backyard. Who doesn't love their song? Yeah. But I love their personality and coloring just as much, Troy says. I look forward to their arrival in these colder months. That's a grand close-up picture. And finally, from November 2021 as well, in Troy's backyard, he says, I love these woodpeckers as they navigate between their vigilance to watching the skies above and their intense preoccupation for finding food. That's a great description, too. Really crisp images, Troy. You can really see the feather traces so well. All right, so talk us through your images.
Okay, this one was, this is the roof of the Nature Center at Croton Point, and I was photographing the great crested flycatcher that was around there. And I heard this robin fledgling, and just one of the parents just came by to pacify it. This one was at the top of the Metro North building in Ossining. Saw this bird that was on the right, and it was just totally still, not moving at all. I watched it for quite a while, and I started to think it was a statue or a scarecrow. And then the other bird came and started preening it. And I had just gotten Sibley's new book. I was thumbing through it, and there was a picture almost exactly like this. And he was talking about birds preen themselves with their bills, but they can't preen their heads and their necks. So they have to use their feet. The ravens, being very social, will preen their brethren. This was a great blue heron, took umbrage of the double-crested cormorant, and the gull was watching all of this as it was going on. This was a part of a sequence of a whole bunch of photos. This osprey was eating his fish, and this crow was just walking all around it and up to it and back and forth. And finally, the osprey got mad enough to chase it away. And then eventually, actually, the osprey also left with his fish and landed on a solitary pylon so he could eat in peace. This is at the Croton Bay at the train station. I saw this adult eagle land with a fish on some deadwood. A bit later, I was watching it, and then a bit later, this immature eagle landed at the other end of the deadwood, and then gradually inched closer and closer to the adult, and finally got close enough, used his boarding house reach to snag the fish. The adult was, didn't bat an eyelash, and must have been their offspring, because eventually they flew off together. I sent this photo and some comments to the Hudson River Almanac, and they published the comments. And Tom Lake sent me a note saying he thought that was a third-year female whose hormones are starting to kick in, which makes them fearless.
All right, so we have Barbara Berry Schulz is here and unmuted. Welcome, Barbara.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I'm just getting started on my photography journey. So I've had this is one of mine that I took in King Point State Park. It's on the St. Lawrence, and this heron just was sitting there waiting for us when we got to our campsite, and I was so excited that we were able to see him, and he was just standing and flying, and we were lucky that he was able to fly. And I'm always interested in trying to get them in flight. For some reason, I feel like that's a nice capture.
Yeah.
So down at the Marslands Conservancy, I chose this photo because I really liked the yellow feet and the yellow eye and the reflection in the water. I thought it was really, it captured the movement.
That's neat.
I think this is the same exact guy, and he is standing, and I chose this one because of the circle around the standing bird. I really liked the way he was just standing perfectly center, and he had just gone down and come back up, So
really neat.
This is back up at King Point State Park, and first thing in the morning right from our campsite, looking across the waterway were these 5 swans synchronized swimming. I think they were in perfect formation, and I just love the setting. And sometimes I am also trying to work on the composition of the photos, and not just an amazing capture of a bird, but to kind of capture the moment. And I think the fog does that.
It really is evocative. Yeah.
And this one I captured when we were on a bird walk, and up on the former dump site where we have the beautiful, I think it's Mullins, I'm not sure how to say it, but he was just sitting there looking right at me. He's just beautiful. That's the Hudson River below, and across the river, the mountains in the background.
Yeah, the colors really came through with her, right? Look at that. Nice.
So thank you very much, Anne, for guiding and showing us where we can go and see some wonderful things, because I would never have been able to experience these things. So very grateful.
That's wonderful, and thank you for sharing your photography with us. It's really some beautiful images. Thank you. Hey, David, are you here from the West Coast?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, yay.
Hey.
That's great.
So, greetings, everyone, from Silicon Valley in San Francisco Bay Area. So,
That's great.
first photo. So, I had no idea. I'm a birder, not a flower guy, and I had no idea what this flower. I thought it was some kind of tiger lily, which I vaguely remembered from the East Coast when I lived in New York. But and actually looked this up and discovered it's a often sought after Humboldt's lily. So I just love the juxtaposition of flowers against rocks because I'm also an amateur rock collector. But the other thing, just quickly mentioned the location. It's kind of a bittersweet location. For those who know the name Montecito, California, 3 years ago this January, when we actually had rain in California, there was a horrible mudslide in Montecito that killed 23 people. And this is the canyon where it happened. So just to the left is the creek where that all happened. And, development is, getting pretty close to the wildlands here and a very tragic situation. But right now it's a very calm and peaceful. I actually knew someone who got killed in that mudslide, but, climate change, floods, people living too close to creeks that flood, a whole mess, but a beautiful canyon nonetheless. It's a suburb of Santa Barbara where a lot of rich and famous like Oprah Winfrey live. Next slide. This is just a scenery shot at Pinnacles National Park, formerly Pinnacles National Monument. It's about 2-hour drive south of San Jose, California. And beautiful, very not well visited park because it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, although it really is accessible from Silicon Valley on a day trip. And really cool volcanic formations, caves. There's some caves to go through. And its big claim to fame in the bird world is there are now 42 California condors that have been hacked here, and raised. Unfortunately, when I was here in November, we didn't see any, but they're pretty regularly spotted here, and I have seen them before. So if you're in the Bay Area and want a shot at California condor, this is one place to go.
That's great.
Next photo. So this is a male Western tanager. He had a bird feeder that I happened to just set up shop at. I went up to this county park that's about an hour up from the valley floor, which is a great place to see Lawrence's goldfinch. So I was looking for Lawrence's goldfinch as well as a reported vermilion flycatcher, which is not normally there. I dipped on the vermilion, but as I was looking for the Lawrence's goldfinch, I noticed right around the ranch house, and it's a historic house where Herbert Hoover and Leland Stanford of Stanford University fame were hosted. This is right by the parking lot. I noticed this bird bath was getting a lot of bird activity, and I almost was about to leave and almost fell off my, I almost fell over when this male Western tanager showed up. And then I have another photo from the same spot. And Lawrence's goldfinches were showing up there. So I was rewarded by my patience in looking for Lawrence. I didn't think I'd even get a good photo, but again, sometimes patience paid off. I sat about an hour at this bird bath, which was just a short walk from the parking lot, which I've learned over the years. Don't underestimate habitat that's close to the parking lot. Some of my best birding has been just in a parking lot or just nearby. So this is also on the way up to Mount Hamilton, where the Lick Observatory is too. So people often pass Joseph Ranch Park on the way up to the Lick Observatory too. So pretty cool birds up there. And the next slide. Same part, and this bird was in fact in the parking lot, at the edge of the parking lot, about a couple of 100 feet from where that bird feeder was. Beautiful Western kingbird perching very nicely there, for me.
That's neat. Yeah, we'd like to have that perching here. That would be quite a nice
Yeah.
bird.
Yeah, I think my life Western kingbird was actually at Jones Beach, West End.
That's
And
right.
I think I ran it years ago, about 40 years ago. I think John Bull was there and some other people. So I think my lifer is actually on the East Coast.
I was going to say that's right. We get quite a few that show up, particularly at Jones Beach. That's cool. Very nice. Thank you, David.
Welcome.
All right, so if we can prepare to hear from Rebecca Bell, if she's online. Hey, Rebecca.
Hi,
Great. Good to see you.
is my
Here
video
you-
working?
Yep, you're good.
Oh, okay.
We hear you.
Okay. Um, okay, so yeah, Eastern bluebird, one of my favorite birds to photograph around here. Rockefeller State Park is right on my doorstep. It's the place I go most often for birds. And this one, the funny story about this is that I have a very good friend who's lived in New York for her whole life and swore she'd never seen a bluebird, but was leaving New York to move to North Carolina, and she knew that the bluebird is the state bird of New York, and she asked if I could get a picture of a bluebird to remind her of New York. So this is the one that I took for her and had framed and gave to her. And I was just actually down in North Carolina this past weekend to visit her in her new home for the first time. And what is hilarious is I saw at least 20 bluebirds in her garden, in her backyard.
In North Carolina.
So she's got no excuse for saying she's never seen one because they're literally right outside her door now.
Oh, that's funny.
But this one she has framed on her wall, so it's a nice one. He's pleasantly plump.
Yeah. Besides, it's a New York bluebird, so.
It's different. This is tree swallows. So again at Rockefeller, they put up a lot of nesting boxes along the trails there, and I enjoy going out in May and June just to see what's happening. And I always love it when I can capture some personality in my photos, not just a still portrait, but some kind of action or interaction. And this is I think 2 male tree swallows who are fighting over their territory. That was Anne's best guess. But what was funny was on the adjacent bird box there were 2 eastern bluebirds who were very serenely sharing the nesting box. But on the next one down, these 2 were fighting. So the contrast amused me.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this was interesting. So I was one of the fortunate people who did get to travel this year. My family is all in England, and after 2 years, we were able to take a trip back to England in August. And my dad and stepmom are keen birders, and so I spent a couple of days out with them doing some birding. And we went to the headquarters of the RSPB, which is the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. It's basically the British equivalent of the Audubon Society. So it's the main birding organisation in Britain. So their headquarters are in a place called Sandy in Bedfordshire. And we spent an afternoon walking around gorgeous grounds to sort of a big stately home. But I rounded a corner and was confronted with this animal, which I had literally never seen or heard of before. And it's called a muntjac deer. And I was looking up some information. Apparently they're originally native to Asia, but were brought over to Britain. And apparently some of them escaped from captivity in the 1920s, but they have now sort of bred to an extreme degree in that they are on track to be the most common breed of deer in the UK, which I just thought was fascinating. And they're short, they're probably waist height on me, and very striking looking. I had never seen anything quite like that before.
Wow. Huh.
This was taken on my first trip to a place called Innisfree Garden up in Millbrook, New York. If you've never been, it's north on the Taconic, and it's well worth checking out. Fabulous place. And I was on a walk around the grounds and came across this great blue heron, and it was doing battle with this snake for literally 10 minutes. Was trying to eat this snake, and the snake was just not cooperating. And I have a whole series of pictures of this snake writhing around, doing everything in its power to avoid being eaten, and the heron flinging it around and trying different ways to swallow it. And eventually the heron dipped it back in the pond and then swallowed it. And I'm not quite sure whether it was trying to drown it so it would stop resisting, or whether it was possibly lubricating it so it would go down more easily. But I literally then saw it eat this snake and saw it go down, and it was really a highlight of the year for me. I'm not a fan of snakes, but just the whole interaction between the heron and the snake, it was like this battle of the species. It was really fascinating to watch.
That's fun. Neat capture. Really good. Yeah.
And finally, just a big thank you to the people who are responsible for putting up those teardrop-shaped nesting boxes for the purple martins at Croton Point, because I just think it's a fabulous addition to birding in the area. And I just love this shot because you can see the difference between the male and the female in terms of the colouring, with the female with the grey head, slightly smaller. And I just, it's a highlight every spring to now go see them checking out that special home.
That's a great record shot for us. We'll have to, if with your permission, of course, that would be really neat to use to teach about that. That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. So if Ginger's online and ready to go, we'll have her unmuted. Thank you, co-hosts, for taking care of these unmuting things. Hey, Ginger.
Hello. How's everybody?
Hey, good. All good. There's your guide.
Okay. Well, thank you. This guy, the picture itself is sort of dull. It reflects a very cold, breezy February day down at Verplanck, and he was walking towards me, and the series of photos were interesting. He was so delicately walking, and I just love the way the ice was cracking as he was walking, and he, with his head tucked, he just was quite an interesting old man walking on ice. I just loved it.
Huh. Neat image.
This is the backyard bird. We're very fortunate to have multiple house wrens. They do their voice territory, and this guy landed here in early April and was just singing his heart out. He woke us up practically every morning for a month, and it was just amazing to see. We were fortunate enough. He was fortunate enough to find his mate, and we had 2 breeds this year. So we were very excited about that.
Oh, that's neat. And singing too.
Well, and this yellow warbler, we were camping up in Mongat Pond in the Catskills, and this yellow warbler was sitting on this nest. And we were there for about 7 days. So we were able to watch this female sit on these eggs, and eventually they hatched. And then the male and the female were really just constantly feeding about four little babies. So it was an amazing time. It really was.
Wow, it's a close-up look too, right?
Yeah, well, I the bird itself was in our campsite, and with the telephoto lens, I think I didn't disturb it really.
Yeah, no, yeah, that would be a neat shot for the breeding bird outlets too. It's just really tucked in there.
Yeah, and the male and the female both co-parented. It was an amazing time to watch them go in and out, constant. It's the parenting was exhausting watching.
So many trips. I think some other people captured that busyness as well. Thanks, Ginger.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, Dick, are you online and ready? Give you a chance to
Yes,
unmute.
I just unmuted, yes.
Oh, very good. Well, welcome. Glad to hear from you about your pictures tonight.
Yes. So we there's out in the Hudson, there's a navigational marker, and there were ospreys nesting out there this past season, and I think they've been there in other years from what I'm told, but it's pretty far out in the river, and one day this one came and was on an electrical tower by the Metro North Railroad, the Hudson Line, and he took off, and I was able to grab my camera just at the right time, so it was just a lucky shot.
Very intense looking. Yeah.
And I really enjoy sanderlings on the ocean beaches, and what I was very, very glad to get this particular angle on them, because usually, you know, they were racing in and out of the water, in and out of the surf, and in this case, they stayed in the surf too long and had to all take off to escape the waves. So I was glad to get these at just the right time.
And they're all synchronized and stacked too. It's a neat picture. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
This was, by the way, this photo, there's no photoshopping in this. This was a red tail that was around the apartment buildings that are near where we are in the southern Ossining, and so the ravens have been roosting on top of the buildings, I believe. The ravens are, if they're not roosting there, they're around a lot. And this red tail came by, and they had an aerial duel for several minutes right around the buildings. And I'd never seen that. And they never touched each other. And but I don't think they were playing. I think it was real territorial dispute going on. There were no nestlings. This was fairly recently in the fall. There were no. The red tail wasn't after the little birds, but the raven obviously didn't like him around.
That's pretty neat. It's a neat comparison in size and shapes too. Cool.
And this photo is from Vassar Farm up near Poughkeepsie, and we were with you a few weeks back. And I like this picture of a nuthatch because it's not the usual perspective. You know, most of the time you get the nuthatches busy right on the tree trunks and limbs, and this was a different kind of shot. And I like both the little seed in its mouth, and also to see the very large size of their feet. That you usually don't see that perspective when we see the nuthatches.
So Mel, are you ready and queued up?
So first of all, thanking Sawmill River Audubon for all these awesome experiences. You know, since I joined during COVID, I've only grown as a birder and a photographer. So thank you. First off, I'm glad to share some non-bird photos as well as my bird photography. And this is a red fox kit and her mom. And this is a crazy story of these two this fox that made her den in Asbury Park, New Jersey, right along the boardwalk in a burnt down building. So there had been a lot of hype about these foxes and I refused to go. But then I was in New Jersey and went, and I really have to thank another photographer because I stood out there for 4 hours. They did not come. And I was ready to leave because I had a 2.5-hour drive home. And she was like, don't go, they're going to come out. They come out, and they did. And so I was really thrilled. I always try to get the interactions between the kit and the mom if I can. And I was very pleased with this photo. So this is the best experience I've ever had with birds or photography. And this was during COVID when we were so lucky to be able to do what we love because we were outside. And my friends, the birding boys, had located this nest. And then by coincidence, it was on my friend's property. And so we together watched these owls grow for 6 weeks. So I photographed them from teeny little owlets, and this is the day they fledged, actually. So I spent hours watching them grow and their interactions with their mom. Mostly obviously hard to tell. And the boys actually named them Ollie and Sleepy. Every day I photographed them. I mean, they were 100 feet up in the air and I was 100 feet away. So, I mean, it was really a special experience that, I didn't intrude at all, but to see their relationship was incredible. This is a great egret in breeding plumage, and obviously all dressed up for the breeding season. And this is at the Rookery in Ocean City, which, if you haven't gone, everyone should go, because it's just incredible to witness this and see these egrets. Usually I always say that your car is your best blind, but you don't need a blind when you're there. The egrets, and it's just unbelievable to be able to photograph. This is early morning, and when I was there, I stayed overnight, so I went for dawn, I went for dusk, and it was an incredible experience.
So this was, as you may have said, at the Ocean City Visitor Center. You actually are on this big concrete bridge above all the nests, right?
And this is down at the bottom, actually. Remember when we walked?
Oh, so you were underneath, you shot from underneath there. Very cool.
Yes, I did. And wow. The herons too, the night heron. I mean, this is before they were on eggs. So this is yeah. I wanted to go back, but I never got back there. But this is, early in the season, but full breeding plumage was incredible. And what I usually do is set a goal for myself of what I'm going to photograph, including the composition. And this was my goal for this trip. So I was very happy with this. Here's my California condor. Another goal of mine when I was traveling in August was to see a California condor and hopefully photograph one. And I got to the end of our trip and I had not, and I was hiking in the North Rim, and I bumped into some rangers who were also hiking, and they saw my camera and they said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing great, but I really would love to photograph a condor." And they actually told me where to go. And I went to this bridge and they said, "Walk out on the bridge and look to your left." And there's usually 3 or 4 sometimes. And as I walked out on the bridge, 3 California condors flew over my head. So I wasn't exactly ready, but this is one of the photos that I captured. And I have not researched the tag yet for this condor. But this is Arizona, border of Utah, Arizona. Oh, and there's my little prairie dog friend. So Valles Caldera is a national preserve in New Mexico. And I actually photographed a badger there, prairie dogs there. But you drive, it's an incredibly beautiful location. And it's hikeable and drivable. So, and there are tons of prairie dogs there, and they're amazing to watch. Their relationships with each other, they're so curious. So, and I just loved how this little guy was looking out over the mountains.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Mel. Thank you for sharing those images. Let's see, Bonvier, are you ready?
This is clearly Robin sitting on crab apples. And I have to tell you that this was actually taken on December 6th, so it's a few days back. And I have been consuming all the low-hanging fruits, and they're delicious of the crab apple. No, this is a great blue heron at Leonard Park. So when we go there, this blue heron I think I have been kind of seeing him July and August for many years. So I think after the breeding season, he comes to this park. So here you can see him with a fish. Yeah, he actually had caught a larger one and then decided it was too large and threw it away. Clearly, when I moved to this house 40 years ago, I brought a wren house with me. And since then, I actually have had wren house in my yard. And fortunately, I always get wren houses. And these are this year's photos. You know, here's the wren. You know, this year actually, instead of having 6 or 7, they actually only had 2.
Huh.
And both of them clearly very hungry.
Huh.
And as you can sort of see that as I was taking photos, I managed to, within few hours, catch the bird, grabbing a KTT and a caterpillar and feed those. So, you know, I kind of, as I said, I kind of have them here. They're kind of friends that live around, and I'm glad to have them here.
All right, so we're going to turn the corner now to our last photographer and for our program, and that will be Kara Mason. And Kara, are you unmuted and good to go?
Yep.
Oh, that's excellent. Thanks for being here, and thanks to everybody. We're really enjoying these images, I know. Look at this.
So I had only seen 2 sandhill cranes in my life. They were really exotic to me. So when I heard about thousands of them overwintering at Bosque del Apache Reserve in New Mexico, I just had to go and experience this spectacle. So many birds, like something out of a dream. This shot was typical of what we saw all week. There were thousands of sandhills, snow geese, and even a little pintail duck at the lower right corner. So I like this photo because it shows them dancing. And the challenge of taking it was to isolate just a few birds from the crowd. They flew like in and out, and there were usually like, 10 or 15 of them in every shot. But, you would just try to sort of shoot through all of them and try to find a couple of them just standing or dancing. So sandhill cranes are about 3 to 4 feet tall, and they have 6 to 7 foot wingspans. They live about 40 years, and they mate for life. So if they look prehistoric, it's because they are. There was a fossil found of one from 2.5 million years ago. Sometimes they have like rust color in their feathers, and this is from preening themselves with like iron deposits from the soil. It's not part of their feathers, they're actually adding it to them. So each morning, the cranes blast off from the ponds that they roosted in overnight and settle in the cornfields at Bosque. At sunset, they arrive back in the ponds. The sound of them with their powerful calls and arriving in flocks along with snow geese. And then there's like red-winged blackbirds and other blackbirds like doing murmurations in the fields. And it's set against this incredible backdrop of Bosque. And the sun sets like you've never even seen. I mean, I couldn't even capture it. I literally one night just put down my camera. We were all standing out there with these, big cameras with long lenses. I was on a photography trip. And one day I just put down the camera and took out my iPhone and just videoed it because I couldn't quite explain it to friends at home. So Bosque del Apache is a refuge, and it's managed by the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So they grow corn on the fields, and then they flood it in the fall to like make ponds where the geese can come. I mean, the cranes and the geese can come. And usually there are, 30,000 of them or thousands and thousands littering the sky. So in the last couple of years, there's been a drought in the West and in New Mexico, and the Rio Grande has shrunk quite a bit from damming and droughts. And I guess they couldn't justify flooding the fields, and also they were having trouble with the corn crops growing. So this, while being a terrible thing, was good for us photographers because the ponds that they did flood were much smaller and the birds were much closer to us. So I was really lucky to get this pintail. And there were like lots of pintail all in the little ponds right close to us. And I was lucky to isolate this beautiful one. So because the corn was cut back really short, usually the wildlife is hiding among the corn. And the photographer that led the trip, he said you would see just a little bit of coyote, you would just see the head, or you would see a little bit of deer. And these harrier hawks were flying in all over the place and grabbing prey. I mean, we'd stand out there. You couldn't believe the show that was going on. But a couple of days, these coyotes came out, a male and a female, and they got within maybe 30 feet of us. And one like walked right near me and stared right in the face at me. It was almost disconcerting. But this one was jumping after some prey. And right after the shot, he got this big, like, I don't know, field mouse. It was pretty big, and the tail was sticking out of its mouth. I didn't show that shot, but I thought this was kind of cool. So, I mean, and it's credible. They get right up next to the cranes, and the cranes dwarf them. The cranes are like, 4 feet tall next to the coyote. And the cranes are like absolutely nonplussed by the coyotes being there. So that was kind of cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And it's a good reminder to us that, Audubon is birds, other wildlife, and their habitats. And coyotes are a sign of a healthier habitat. So that's great to see, both in New Mexico and here. All right, folks, we want to give a big thank you to all of our photographers. Just really wonderful. There is actually research about how your brain lights up and your emotions are affected even just viewing pictures of nature. And we certainly have enjoyed some beautiful images tonight. We want to thank you for joining us tonight on Zoom for this program. Visit our website to see other upcoming events at sawmillriveraudubon.org. And we wish you, as always, good health and good birding.